Hey guys, my name is Haley, and today I'm finally going to be filming my wrap-up for the end of 2018 because I ran out of filming steam by the end of the Vlogmas videos that I did, and I haven't got the chance to film yet this year, so. And also, I really didn't even read that much, I feel like, in November and December, so I for sure fell into a K-pop hole, which I've mentioned several times now. And the majority of these books I read, I want to say like right after Tome Topple. And they were very spread out. And this is not that many books for me for 2 months, but we're gonna wrap them up anyway. So I did not read these back to back, but I'm gonna talk about them both at the same time because it's a duology, and that is The Infection and The Killing Floor by Craig DeLuey. This is a zombie post-apocalyptic series. This cover freaks me out, so we're gonna show this one. And it's honestly really good. I gave it like a solid 4.25 to 4.5 stars. I do prefer the first one. I think it had a more interesting storyline than the second one. But what I really liked about these was that they involved like these monster things that I've never seen in a zombie apocalypse novel, and they did a really good job developing the characters as well, which again, I preferred the ones in the first book, but the second book was still pretty solid, and it was a really good wrap up to the duology. So if you're looking for a good zombie novel, I do recommend these. I think they're self-published, or if they are, they're not from a very big publishing house, because says it's from Permuted Press is the publishing house. I'm not sure. But I feel like these are underrated because I've never heard of them and I picked them up randomly in a bookstore. But if you enjoy zombie novels, these are some good ones, and I'm very picky about my zombie novels. Next up, I read the novelization of Dear Evan Hansen. This is, if you don't know, I've mentioned it many times before, the musical Dear Evan Hansen is one of my favorites. I'm a huge fan of it. I don't enjoy this as much as the musical. I gave it like a 4.5 stars, but I did find what they did with Connor's character really interesting because they gave him his own perspective in this, which the musical doesn't really, which I found really interesting. It is really different being this much inside of Evan's head, but I like the way that they adapted this into a YA novel. I think it adapts really well, but I do prefer the musical. Mainly because I'm partial to the music in that show, and that's why I love it so much, but I do still love the storyline. So if you know any kids in high school, I think this is a really good recommendation for that. But I love the portrayal of anxiety in this musical, this show, this book, all of it. As a book, am I biased because it's one of my favorite musicals and that's what it's based off of? Yes. If it was just its own thing, I would probably have given it a slightly lower rating than a 4, but I'm biased towards this entire storyline. Next up is a book that I was sent for review, and that is It Could Happen Here by Greg Watson. This is a Christian fiction novel, and it wasn't my favorite, but I do think that this author has really good potential. I think this is his first book, so props to him for publishing it. I think it's a really good concept. Like, I really liked the idea and the like almost sci-fi, not even sci-fi, just like social commentary elements on what could happen if the internet went in a certain direction, and if this felt like this could actually happen, and that's kind of really creepy. I don't want to give away spoilers, but the issues I have with this was mainly with the writing and just like the characters. I felt like some of them were very villainized, which again, that does happen in real life, but to me they felt like caricatures of villains rather than well-developed villains. So I gave this a 3.5 stars. It might be closer to a 3, but I think it's a solid first book from a brand new author. And I love that Christian fiction is being more brought into like the forefront, I feel like, of just books in general, especially like YA. If you're looking for a self-published like indie author, I would recommend this one. I think it's pretty good. And then Tome Topple happened, and I only read 3 books for Tome Topple, which is not my normal. I feel like I normally read more than that. And one of them was a reread, and that was Twilight. I annotated it a lot. I've already done several videos on this, I feel like, but I don't have that much to say. It's Twilight. I love it. Obviously, by my annotations, probably a solid 4 stars, both for nostalgia, but I also just think it's really easy to read, which is one of my favorite things about the series. We love a good nostalgic Twilight reread. Next up, I read Bloodsong by Anthony Ryan, and I gave this 4.5 stars, but I think my problem with it was that it took me so long to read because I was so much in a K-pop hole. Like, I got into Astro at the same time that I was reading this book, which was such a mistake because, as you've probably been able to tell from my channel, I've become head over heels obsessed with Astro, and this book took the full, like, brunt force of it, which was my bad, I think. I think this would have been, like, a solid 4.75 if that hadn't happened, but now I'll never know. So, but yes, I love this world. I loved our main character. Valen was such a good main character. He was so interesting, and I really liked the, like, almost... It is fantasy, so like the fantasy but almost magic aspects to it because it's not very explained yet. I'm assuming it will be in the rest of the series, and I do own the second book, but I have not been in the mood for really big books, so doing Tome Topple was a struggle for me last year, but I did read this. I did really enjoy it. I think it's a really solid first book in a fantasy series, and I would definitely recommend. I almost feel like I should reread it before continuing with the series because I did not give it its full chance, but... that might not actually happen, we'll find out. And then the last book I read for Tome Topple was Saint Anything by Sarah Dessen. I listened to this on audio. I love Sarah Dessen. This is honestly one of my favorite Sarah Dessens that I've ever read. I really liked our main character. I liked the seriousness of this storyline because a lot of her books are like really cutesy and like shorter and like mostly about the romance, but this had so much more going for it, I felt like. And I really liked the sibling dynamic between her and her brother because it was a huge part of the book, and it was really interesting because I don't think I've ever read from the perspective of a girl who like sees all the faults in her brother and their parents just don't see the seriousness of what Peyton has done. Like, the mom in this drove me absolutely insane, but she's kind of supposed to because there are a ton of people I know like her, so I think that's why she grinded on my nerves so much, but she's really supposed to. Like, she's just so blinded by her love for her son, which like does happen in real life, so I get it, but it's really frustrating to watch and read from. But this book was fantastic. Solid 4 stars. Definitely gonna keep this. I'm gonna do a Sarah Dessen reread hopefully this year so I can go through and like pick the ones that I actually still enjoy because I've been reading her since middle school, but I think this one's definitely gonna stay. Then I'm quickly gonna mention a DNF, and that was Running with Scissors by Augustin Burroughs. I picked this up at the library book sale because someone I used to follow on BookTube like forever ago mentioned it once and said this is what got them into reading adult books. And it is a memoir, which I did know, but I really did not like it. It was weirdly inappropriate for like no reason, and I got like halfway through the audiobook and I was like, can't do it. So I DNF'd it. Then these last 3 I listened to on audio because that was the only way I was getting any reading done at the end of last year. And that is The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks was the first of them. This was fantastic. Definitely one of my favorite nonfiction books I've ever read. I found her story so interesting. This is about Henrietta Lacks, and she was a sort of nobody person whose cells were taken from her, and her cells, without her permission, like she never signed for it, have been used to create several like scientific and medical advances that we kind of take for granted nowadays, and they all started with this woman, and her family never got anything for it. She never got anything for it. She passed away like not super long afterwards, and it's about this reporter who went and like got the story from her family of who Henrietta Lacks was and her wanting to get their story told, which I really, really love this. This is a solid 4.5 stars. The audiobook was fantastic. Definitely recommend that one too. Second to last was A Tree Grows in Brooklyn by Betty Smith. I know this is like a literary fiction, like almost modern classic, I feel like. This is really floppy and it's really hard to hold because it's just like going like this all over the place. But I liked this. If you're gonna read it, I would definitely recommend the audiobook. I don't think I would have finished it without the audiobook because I didn't find the storyline that interesting. It is like immersive in the time period, but it was just not my type of book at all, which is a shame because the writing's really pretty. But I gave this a 3.5 stars. I'll give it the fact that I did finish the book, but I'm not sure if it was the writing or the audiobook that made me finish it. Because I think if I had read this in print form, I probably wouldn't have, so take that how you would like. And then the last book that I finished in 2018 was The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini, and I also listened to this on audio, and this audiobook is fantastic. I would definitely listen to the audio, because this made me cry, this made me really angry, this made me really upset. Like, this is a solid, like, 4.5, 4.75 stars for me. And it probably would have at least been in my honorable mentions for my favorite books of 2018, but I read it way too late and after I filmed that video, which always happens to me. I don't know why I keep filming it so early. I loved everything about it. It's apparently a movie. I don't know if I want to watch that because I think I'll just cry the entire time. This is so well written and so poignant and just so important of a book. And I know Kate said this is like one of her favorite books of all time, and I was like kind of scared to read it because of that. Like, it's a book I've heard of a ton for years, probably since it came out. But it just never occurred to me that I should read it, apparently. Quite frankly, I didn't know the synopsis or anything, and I didn't even know the synopsis going in. But this was absolutely fantastic. Please, please, please read it. It's such an important novel. I know I gave, like, no description of it, but there's so much that happens in this that I don't even know how to describe it. Can you tell I'm, like, out of practice describing books because of all the K-pop stuff? Because I feel like I didn't explain this at all. I'm trying, guys. We're gonna try and get back into this book talking thing, but also I read some of these books like 2 or 3 months ago, so yeah. But these are all the books that I read in the end of 2018. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.